Thank you, Missy. And yes, good to be back on stage. And I am delighted to be talking to our friends at Foundry. I'm sure many of you know and love their software like Nuke and Modo. So I'm joined by Matt Mazerolle, and you are Director of Product for New Products. Is that right? New
New technology,
Technology.
yeah, that's right.
And I'm also joined by Dan Caffrey, and you are the virtual production specialist, which is super interesting to have you guys join us. Now, we're here today to discuss how AI can help connect virtual production from previs to post. But I think the first thing to really talk about is what do you guys mean by virtual production? Because let's face it, different people mean different things. But also, I'm particularly interested in where Foundry, a company traditionally focused on post-production or associated with post-production, where does Foundry fit into virtual production? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I mean, virtual production, I remember when I was working at Autodesk many, many years ago, virtual production really came into the vernacular with the first Avatar film, essentially kind of merging that sort of like shot scouting previs, but really kind of getting as much of the filmmaking process in the bag before doing, actual live capture. And then it kind of was dormant for a long time. And what's been really fascinating now is seeing it kind of reemerge with this, kind of amazing, I guess, alignment of the stars of game engines reaching a certain point in quality, the emergence of LED wall technology, and I think the pandemic as well was a big accelerator for kind of applications of new techniques that could get around a lot of the problems that were imposed by the pandemic. So I think there's a lot of credit to be given for what virtual production means today, to a lot of different elements and players in the space. When we think of virtual production today, it's almost, often we're talking about in-camera VFX, right? And I think when you talk about Foundry's interest in the virtual production process, the in-camera VFX one is one that interests us in particular because, one, it's very young, right? It's very new. And two, as a result of that, there's all kinds of new technologies and processes that bring with them new problems and challenges. And a lot of those problems and challenges have to do, with usual things like getting everybody to work together in a consistent pipeline. We are obviously have a position of strength in Foundry as a post-production company, but when in-camera VFX and LED wall technology came into the scene, we started hearing from customers quite a bit about how this actually made the post-production process sometimes more expensive, more complicated, and even though you could really kind of get a lot of creative decision making done on set, getting that last final push in post was actually more difficult than if it had been shot in kind of more traditional techniques. So we really think those problems can be overcome, right? And we have Dan, for example, he's worked on virtual production across a large number of shows, and he's lived these problems, right? So kind of looking more holistically at the filmmaking process, not just the post side, but how it all connects together is really the lens that we're looking at virtual production through from a research point of view.
And Dan, so when did you join Foundry?
Yeah, so I joined Foundry 3 years ago, and I came from a post-production background. So I spent some time at DNEG across a lot of 3D and 2D disciplines, as well as technology. Moved to Industrial Light and Magic and did their sort of stagecraft virtual production on set and in the studio. And it was very early, and it was clear that there was a lot of challenges, and some of those were solved by technology, some of those were solved by the languaging that we all speak and how we communicate and collaborate in a kind of on-set environment. And that was really interesting to me to come to Foundry, who's obviously been speaking this language for such a long time and has really dived deep into things like the color science and these really big problems in virtual production.
Great, thank you. And we should add that you referenced virtual production, how it, as a term, it's been around for many years. We were actually at Autodesk at the same time during those early Avatar days. So, yeah, interesting to see how it's come full circle, literally come full circle.
Big shout out to Motion Builder's early contributions to virtual production, which should be in the history books.
Absolutely, so true. So, I mean, we've talked about the last 3 years and the pandemic, how that really accelerated things. You could argue there's been a lot of hype about virtual production. So, can you talk a little bit about like what's changed in the last few years and what needs to change to really make it succeed?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I guess the big changes were there was a lot of excitement about this. It's a new technology, or it's a new application of an existing technology, and so everybody's running at this and trying to explore the boundaries and how to best use it and how to kind of service the creative process really, and how to get the most out of it. I think the biggest change is we're realizing where it's best suited, and those areas, even on the hardware side, are now beginning to be addressed. We see incredible features and products coming from hardware manufacturers to handle challenges with color and those kind of things. So it's really kind of converging on the most applicable version of in-camera visual effects.
So, another hot topic, and of course, this year has been the real tipping point, but AI, machine learning, deep learning, that's really assisting content prep, a lot of post-production processes. But I wonder if you could talk about how Foundry, are you using AI? How are you using it? What impact is it having on the virtual production process?
Yeah, I think AI intersects with virtual production in a couple of areas. So some of them are probably rather obvious, right? So preparing content for LED walls. You can apply technologies like generative content generation, machine learning, generative content. That's one area. Technologies like NERFs, being able to scan and get like really great, content, with great look generated through machine learning. Definitely obvious applications there. I think where we explored the application of machine learning that maybe is a little bit unique was last year. We did a collaboration with an Italian film, kind of a smaller budget Italian film that's actually being showcased at the Venice Film Festival this week, called Comandante. And their challenge was they wanted to have these shots of a boat, and lots of water, reflection, everything flying around. But the idea of doing that virtual production, they couldn't actually build a boat and float it out in the ocean. So they wanted to do it with LED walls, but they had to be waterproof, right? And the resolution of those walls was really not suited for in-camera VFX. So the idea was to shoot on an LED wall that would contribute the lighting, that would make all the water effects look really good, but then as quickly as possible be able to remove and replace the LED wall with a fully tracked and fully conformed high quality version. So we created this process called near real time, kind of an experimental process that we did in collaboration with a variety of partners on the film, including like Hi-Res Studios and Cook and some others. And the idea was to collect as much metadata as you could, motion capture data, lens metadata, and then bring all that into Nuke so you could essentially start replacing the virtual elements with higher quality versions. So we used Copycat, which is our machine learning framework inside of Nuke. So we would pre-train a copycat model of the talent in costume, and then we were able then to use Copycat to recognize the talent in the in-camera VFX shots and remove them, and then use the metadata to re-render the LED wall with high quality, and then composite everything back together.
Wow. Okay. So I had no idea Foundry was doing this kind of thing. Is that within Nuke, or as you are director of product new technology, is this new products, software development that you're generating that then feeds into Nuke?
Yeah, so we
Or
look at it
can't you
as
say?
yeah, so no, we look at it as like an experimental technique, right? All of those individual pieces like all exist today, right? We were capturing, metadata through Unreal. We were feeding, all of that into Nuke. We were using Copycat and our Unreal integration called Unreal Reader to re-render the background. It was really more about going in and finding all of the pieces that needed to be stitched together to make that process happen, and then going in and sort of seeing if we could do that, in a repeatable way that would help the filmmakers achieve their goals. It's not something that's in a box. There's such a variety of infrastructure, different processes, different types of stages that it wasn't really something that you could kind of like give to people like, here, go and do it. But it was
Yeah.
really a way for us to learn a lot about those touch points with the virtual production process. And interestingly, that's where this application of machine learning to do the matting component was, interestingly and surprisingly applicable to this process.
And I take it worked. The results were what one hoped for, or is that pushing it too far?
Yeah, I mean, they ended up using this technique on Comandante. They found it really informed the director about what he'd shot, and he'd captured the right thing, and it kind of gave him the confidence to accelerate the production. And we haven't seen the result of that yet, but at the Venice Film Festival, we'll see the result of Comandante. But this is the beginnings of a much larger puzzle piece in terms of capturing metadata. And you kind of mentioned like what's next and what are we going to focus on. And we're quite interested in the process as a whole and the workflows and giving creators what they need throughout the process and that delivery to post-production to continue to give everyone the tools they need to make the most of this technology, really.
And that kind of naturally leads me to question about the underlying compute power for all these new workflows. And obviously, we're very close partners. Foundry, you test and publish what machines you've tested and what you recommend for your software, and the Z8, the Z4 are kind of up there. I'm just curious, like, what would your recommendation or ask of a hardware manufacturer like HP be? Like, what do you need us to do to enable these workflows?
I mean, it's always about giving as much power as possible to creatives. And I think when looking at it from a machine learning point of view, I think, as much as there's a lot of contention around what the right boundaries around applying machine learning should be, and I think that's an important discussion that, we have to work through. Like, the technology can't get ahead of that discussion, right? So that's absolutely critical. But no matter where that discussion leads to, um, machine learning is transforming the types of workloads that creatives are doing. And some of it is more power on the local machine for inference, more power to be able to distribute, training workloads, right? So training machine learning models is the new rendering, right? So that's really, really critical, especially with something like Copycat and Nuke, where artists are working hand in hand with creating a machine learning effect. Or they're basically training their own. They're training their own machine learning model with ground truth data that comes from their own shot. Like, it's all within the confines of the content that they're creating, right? So they're giving before and after examples of what they want this effect to do, kind of more generally. So being able to have the compute resources, at their disposal to be crunching on that while they're trying to dial that in, while they're trying to, give the right, the right number of ground truths, and taking the right checkpoints and seeing which ones they need to refine or which ones they're going to carry on. Like, that just needs to flow really, really easily. And I think that's where what HP provides is going to be like really critical to the day to day for artists.
And when it comes to, you talk about always needing more and more performance. So are we talking CPU, GPU combination?
Yeah, GPU all the way. Yeah. When we're looking at even what you see with a lot of in-camera VFX work, right? a lot of it is, you see a lot of real-time game engines, right? So obviously very GPU intensive. We've been looking at work in the LED wall space of, how do you get that, not necessarily just real-time 3D, but can you play back, like plate content is a very, very big use case in the virtual production space. And it's often not discussed nearly as much as it's used, right? So lots of, car work, just, photographic backgrounds. But a lot of that application of virtual production doesn't get attention because it's 2D. But a lot of creative work goes into, into making it look immersive and really, really high quality. In fact, you can push that type of 2D content a lot further than you can push real-time 3D content. If you have, your shots locked in and you really know what you're going for, in a way, the fact that you're restricted to 2D gives you a lot more freedom in terms of pushing the quality and, the visual fidelity. And GPUs are critical to that. They've always been really critical to image processing workloads. So I think we're going to see the criticality of GPU for stage playback as well.
Yeah, and I would also say as the hardware manufacturers begin to produce more and more high resolution screens and things for virtual production, like that's only going to get harder. So the more we can have for storage and networking, we're kind of bringing all of these components to a virtual production stage and giving artists that level of flexibility that they can process these images and control them and really work with DOPs and on-set creatives to make the best image. That's really the goal here on the hardware side.
The holy grail, visual fidelity. Well, thank you both very much. This has been great talking with you. I really like the point you just made about it's not just about 3D. There's so much that is still relevant to the 2D image and how pushing that forward is really important. It's good point. I think we've got a couple of minutes left. Are you willing to take questions? Yeah? Does anybody in the audience have any questions?
Everyone's tired after lunch.
Lucky you got lunch.
We don't mind getting off easy. It's all good.
Yeah, we told you it'd be a gentle interview. So, well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your show. Great to see you at Siggraph 2023.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
Barbara.
you so much.